Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wanderfix. Today we're talking about Vampire the Masquerade. Chad has prepared a presentation talking about it because on April 8th, Dimension 20, who we're all big fans of, is doing a campaign with the Vampire the Masquerade TTRPG system. So, Chad is going to teach us a bit more about the history of Vampire the Masquerade, the world, and the kind of aesthetics of it all. And I'm really excited to learn because I know next to nothing about Vampire the Masquerade.
Yeah, I love Vampire the Masquerade, and so when I saw that Dimension 20 was doing that for the next campaign, I was geeking out. I immediately sent it to my wife. I sent it to all my friends, and I was like, "We are sat for this. I'm super stoked." Hey Eric, do you guys know much about Vampire the Masquerade?
All I know is that there are different clans who each have different powers and rules associated with being a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're all part of the masquerade, which is the whole like people can't know vampires are real. So if you break the rules, someone will come to kill you. That's about all I know.
Yeah, totally. So for me, I started off playing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is I don't remember exactly when it came out, but I loved that game. It's like probably one of my top 10 video games of all time. It's so fun. It's one of those games that you can play through multiple times and kind of get different experiences. And actually, there's some of the playthroughs, if you play through as certain clans, like if you play through as the Nosferatu, we'll get into, it's a totally different experience from the Malkavians, from the rest of them. So it has a lot of replay value, so I love Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I don't think they make video games like that anymore because there's like a lot of heart and passion put into it. And I've also played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which was okay. It was fine. I've seen a lot of complaints of people saying basically that it was a good game, but not a good Bloodlines game, and it should have been called Bloodlines 2. I partially agree with that. I think it was a fun game, but it was nowhere comparable to the first one. And I've also played so a lot of the offshoot like story ones. There's a bunch of like text based ones, like Vampire the Masquerade. I believe Coteries of New York. I played some of those. I really love Vampire the Masquerade. Um, so that's kind of why I'm putting this together.
Chad, if you're
Okay.
okay putting yourself on blast, there have
Yeah.
been many a weekends where I've, opened Discord or Steam or whatever and seen that you're in the middle of like a 12-hour session of playing Vampire the Masquerade's Bloodlines. How many hours on Steam do you have for Vampire the Masquerade? Do you know?
It's not that much.
Okay.
Probably for Bloodlines, probably like 60, 70,
Okay.
um, which is,
And
is a
that's enough
lot, but it's
for
not multiple.
and
Yeah,
that, and
it's
that
not the
equates to what, like,
longest game. Especially once you've done your first playthrough and done all the exploring, I kind of like zoomed through the Malkavian and Nosferatu playthroughs and stuff. Um, but then I was playing the second one for a while, and I played through that one twice. So yeah, the second one has some moments that are kind of harder to get through. It has some walking simulator parts that like really take a long time. And I actually think they just
Okay.
released an update for the second one that shortens it. The second
oh,
one just had an update where you can skip the walking simulator parts because people complained that it was, boring. The story is actually interesting for your first time playing through, but then on the second time, you're like, I don't want to. I know what's going to happen. I just want to do the cool vampire stuff. All right, so let's get into it. Do you have a favorite vampire or vampire depiction in anything? This could be any version of vampires.
I mean, we all of us together watched the Blade movie for the first time recently. That was peak content. I can't think of any other vampire that like I vibe with more than Blade, with maybe the exception of like What We Do in the Shadows or um, not that I liked the character, but the movie Nosferatu I found was really interesting. The one that came out in what 2024.
Bouncing
Um,
it crazy style. That
yeah,
one?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
My favorite has to be from the Castlevania show on Netflix. Vlad Dracula Tepish from that show and Alucard. I just thought were awesome.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. I think Blade. I had never seen these movies, and so we all three of us sat down and watched the first one. Holy crap! I mean, it was so over the top and very goofy, but I loved it. I mean, the style and everything was really fun. Um, I really enjoyed it. So, and then I also agree. What We Do in the Shadows. The movie is really good, but the TV show with that girl in the bottom right. Okay, so here are some keywords to know. These are important things. These are basically like, Nate, cyberpunk, it's like gonk and that from cyberpunk or,
Yeah.
choom. They have
Choom.
all of the different slang and things you need to know. So the first one is the beast. The beast is in every single vampire. So this is the predatory nature that arises as soon as they are embraced. It is what drives vampires to go against their humanity. So it's kind of like this inner demon voice that the people are always fighting against. If you play the tabletop game or in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, this is a big thing. This was not in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, which is why some people say it shouldn't have been a Bloodlines game because it was just simplified. But so the beast is basically like your level of humanity to being a creature, a beast. Um, uh, a lot of people, a lot of vampires, if you do evil things, like if you're just killing humans left and right, you're kind of leveling up your beast modifier. And then maybe you're not going to be able to control yourself as much. Say you eat someone, your beast might take over and you just fully eat them. But if you raise your humanity, say there's like 10 levels, I believe, in the game. If you get to humanity 10, which is like the opposite, you can actually pass for a human in 99% of the situations. Like people won't even know that you're a vampire or ever guess. So that's kind of the whole level of this beast inside of them. The next one is your blood bond. This is a supernatural link of loyalty and obedience created by repeatedly consuming vitae from a single vampire. All recently embraced vampires are slightly blood bonded to their sires.
So
Go
Vitae
ahead.
is blood.
Vitae is the life force in your blood. I have
Okay.
that on here too. In order to become a vampire, you have to drink someone dry and then give them your blood, a vampire blood, and that's how it happens.
So like I become a vampire, I drink someone dry, and then another vampire gives me their blood, and now
No,
we're
no, no.
blood bonded, and I'm a vampire.
If you drink a human's blood all the way gone and then you give them your blood,
Okay.
they are now a vampire.
Okay.
They
So
are
you remove all the
embraced.
human.
It is called it being embraced.
But
Okay.
so and in that scenario, you would be their sire because you're the one who made them the vampire.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And they would be your child or just child. I think it's just child,
Uh,
but it's spelled child. I'm not sure.
Silent.
The child is just the child of a vampire. What they're created by. Cainite.
Can
Oh, go ahead.
can the vampires like have children through normal means, or is it only by drinking blood and turning people?
That's a good question. I think. Let me Google that really quick.
I mean, it did in Blade.
Reddit says no. Just to double check
Oh,
that you cannot have kids by normal means. Some people maybe think that if you have a super high humanity, or that if you're a thin enough blood, thin bloods, are vampires that are super far away from the bloodline, and so they're like almost like Blade, where they're kind of like they can even go out in the sun and that kind of stuff. They might be able to, but most vampires no cannot have children in the normal way.
so how does one become a thin blood? Like, just a weak vampire turns you?
Yeah, so basically, we'll get into this in a second, but the original vampire, um, all the way down, each generation gets slightly weaker. So if you're turned from someone who uh, isn't that old, isn't that high of a generation, and it's like, say your generation like 30 or something, you're probably going to be a thin blood. But if I'm turned
Hmm.
by someone who was, because they're vampires, they live immortal. If I turned from someone who
Yeah.
was in generation 6, just recently, then no, you're a pretty tough vampire. But if you're
Okay.
turned by someone who is 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 turned by someone, it just gets weaker and weaker over time, and that's when you become
Okay.
like a thin blood. Now this is a big one, diablerie. This is the act of a vampire wholly consuming another vampire's blood and soul. It greatly empowers the vampire, and it can even lower your generation. That's what I was talking about earlier. Remember how you could be generation 30 be weak? It could turn you to generation 26 or something in your power
Okay.
level. They may absorb the powers and disciplines of the diablerized vampire. Now, so what this basically means is, say I'm a vampire and I drink another vampire. That is fine. It's fine. But if I drink them all the way and I absorb their blood and soul and just kill them by drinking them, that is diablerizing. This is very frowned upon. Very, 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 very frowned upon, and they will kill you. The masquerade will kill you. Um,
Hmm.
the Sabbat, which we'll get into this. But you're really not supposed to do this. But the Sabbat do this all the time because it's a great way of increasing your power. You gain all of their powers and you get stronger. So,
Bef-
And we kind of skipped this. Canaanite, are they
yeah.
like descendants of Cain?
all vampires are descendants of Cain. So that's just
Huh.
how vampires refer to themselves. It's not super popular anymore. They don't really say this. Most vampires refer to themselves and other vampires as kindred now. But
Mm,
all vampires are descendants of Caine. We'll get into that in a second.
okay.
A little bit more keywords really quick. I got a lot of these keywords from a Reddit user, Hunter the Parenting. So thank you so much for Hunter the Parenting. These are
Shout
very
out to
helpful.
Hunter.
He had a Reddit post of just a bunch of keywords that are important to know if you're getting into this world.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Um, so embrace, we talked about that. That's the act of a vampire turning a human into one of their own, performed by draining entirely of the living person's blood, then giving them some vampiric blood. Frenzy. This is an irrational state vampires can descend to if they let the beast take over their humanity. I mentioned this before. This is basically your beast level. If you get too much of a beast, you go frenzy, and that is you'll just like start murdering people on the street. Like you can't control yourself, and you have to be usually put down. You can come out of a frenzy state, you can, but usually a lot of the times you've broken the masquerade by then, and you will be killed, depending on
So
where you are.
if okay, so like if you enter a frenzy and then commit diablerie, that's still a big no-no. Like they're not
Yeah.
gonna be like, hey, we totally understand. We do that
Nope.
sometimes too.
No,
Oh,
they will not understand.
interesting.
Mm.
Um,
So even just the act of going into a frenzy is kind of against the masquerade.
if you're in public, yes.
Oh,
But if you're like in a building and you're fighting another vampire or fighting a bunch of werewolves or whatever it is, and you go into a frenzy, that's fine. It's not like against the masquerade.
It's basically so long you can go into a frenzy so long as no one else sees it and you don't accidentally break one of the rules of the masquerade while in a frenzy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly that.
But
interesting.
you don't want to go into a frenzy though because you lose control of yourself and then you break the rules without knowing and then you're dead.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Ghouls. We'll get into this more later, so we won't say too much here. It's a living being, a mortal, bound to a vampire for its highly addictive blood. Kindred. That's how vampires refer to themselves. This is most commonly used by the Camarilla. Torpor. This is vampire deep sleep. This is just basically, I go to sleep for 200 years and I wake up. This can happen if they just want to, if they were really weak and need to heal. And I think they can be put into torpor by other vampires, like forcibly. I'm not exactly sure if I
Hmm.
remember that correctly.
So in Bloodlines, is there ever a point where you like enter a torpor and then you wake up 20 years later and the plot is past you?
Not in the first game. In the second one, you wake up. You are in the first game. You are freshly embraced, so you're just like a
Mm.
brand new guy. In the second game, you were actually an ancient vampire who was in torpor for the past like 800 years. So oh man, I can't quite remember, but you're from like the 1200s
Yeah.
time. And then Vitae is what we mentioned earlier. This is the life force within your blood. This is really what they're kind of after.
Okay.
Is there a way to get vitae without blood?
Without blood, no. But
Okay.
you can do things like blood bags. So a lot of vampires that don't want to kill people, you can do blood bags. Some vampires eat animals. Kind of like the whole vegetarian diet. Some vampires cannot eat animals because that actually hurts them. They're like very
Hmm.
picky. So we'll get into that also. Those are clans and stuff.
Okay.
But otherwise, I do not believe so. No, it's all blood. So this is set in the world of darkness. The world of darkness is super similar to ours, but with a lot more darkness. Basically, all conspiracy theories and monster stories are true. That's the basic premise of this. It's the setting for Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Mage the Ascension, Hunter the something, and more. There's a Hunter video game coming out soon. The trailers just came out, and it actually looks pretty cool. So I'm excited for that.
So magic is real, werewolves are real, aliens are real, like just everything's real?
Aliens, I'm not sure. There probably are. When I googled it, this is like from the wiki page. Is that all conspiracies and monster stories are true? So I believe maybe. I mean, that's a conspiracy. There probably are
Right.
aliens out there.
So like
Um,
Mothman, Bigfoot, all of that.
Supposedly,
Yeah.
yes. Hmm.
And is Werewolf the Apocalypse another video game?
No, these are the tabletop games.
Okay.
So Vampire the Masquerade is a tabletop. Werewolf the Apocalypse is a tabletop. Mage the Ascension is a tabletop. So where did it all start? Literally, if you know the biblical story of Cain and Abel, it's after killing his brother Abel, Cain is cursed by God to walk the earth forever. He's offered redemption. He refuses. He becomes the first vampire, passing the curse on to others. These descendants form later generations, eventually creating the Antediluvians, the ancient founders of the vampire clans. We will get into the Antediluvians in a moment.
Okay.
So yeah, it's literally Caine from the Bible. He is the first vampire. He is the guy that started it all. He is not in any of the stories, nor should he. He is dead, supposedly, and might be raised again, or he is in torpor, or there. He's basically kind of like a myth. A lot of the stories, and it's kind of funny when you Google it. It's like you're kind of getting a lot of these stories secondhand, and a lot of it is theories. A lot of it are unknown. Nobody basically knows Caine. He's not like walking around.
Okay.
But even though he was cursed by God to walk forever,
Yeah.
he's,
Uh
he's
huh.
so
Yeah.
how
So
did he
He's
die?
kind of.
That feels like that would be a very significant piece of like vampire folklore.
Let
If
me
there was a
check.
hunter that was able to kill Cain,
or
like
was he just
I
forced
believe you
into?
that it isn't like really ever addressed. That just kind of feels like a realm that would maybe be worth exploring more, like another game or
It's
something like that.
well, vampire
Oh, I
country
am.
or something.
You are correct. He is still around.
Okay.
He does make an appearance in one of the video games. I
Oh,
totally forgot about this until just now. He's still around. And but people don't really know where is the thing. In
Okay.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, there is a taxi driver who drives you around, and he takes you from place to place. On your final mission, he has a big conversation with you where he kind of talks to you about different things. People think he's that taxi driver. And this Reddit post says he isn't active in vampire politics. He is a cab driver in LA, a ranch hand in Montana, a beggar in Syria, a reverend in Germany, a hermit in Tibet, a sailor in Australia, a Twitch streamer in South Africa. When he does interact with Kindred, it's fledglings and Neo-Knights who don't fully know or care about the myth of Caine. He's just another weird thing in the night or another powerful vampire they shouldn't mess with. Sure, he may sire another member of the second generation, but that's not the kind of story most people want to tell because it destroys the idea of Caine to confirm the existence of Caine.
That's really cool.
so he's
So
just
I
kind of.
actually really like that idea that like he is still around, but he doesn't want to be involved in like perpetuating his curse. You know, he doesn't want to uh, be this mythical godly being. Um, he just wants to help those that he can who
yes,
have been
and
afflicted by his curse. That's
in
really cool.
in I agree. And in the first game, Bloodlines, him being this taxi driver that has this long conversation with you about your life and your goals and your different purposes, um, it is not said that he is Caine. This was a big hint, but then when people finally went into the voice lines, the voice files have the name Caine. Um,
Ah,
Okay.
that is really cool. But it would be very funny if like yeah, you're this recently embraced individual who just like hops in a taxi car, and then a week later, your sire is like, "Oh, by the way, we're all children of Cain. This is what he looks like," and you're like, "Wait a minute,
yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah.
seen that guy before."
This
It's like
Reddit post
that's the
says
dude that
he's
dropped me off at your house.
yeah. This Reddit post says he's retired. He might show up every now and again, but I get the feeling he's napping most of
Yeah.
the time. So the Antediluvians. Caine has a second generation, and then there's a third generation. This term literally means before the flood, so it could technically refer to any of the Cainites the vampires, Cainites, that were before the flood. But funny joke is that the flood was apparently sent to wipe out the vampires,
Hmm.
but
Oh,
it they survive. The Antediluvians survive, and they rise up and kill the second generation, and that made Caine really angry. So Caine curses them. So each of the Antediluvians now have a curse and a bloodline, and this is where the clans begin. There are 13, I believe, of them, Antediluvians, and this is where they have Malkav for the Malkavians, Salute for the Salubri,
oh.
and that kind of stuff.
So this explains why Kane also doesn't want to be involved in politics because he hates his kids that murdered his other kids.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yes.
very
Hates his grand.
ironic.
Yes, for him
Hates his
killing his brother.
Yeah.
That it does make me really happy that had they have this lore specifically about the flood. Because when you mentioned that, he's from the Bible, I was like, okay, but what about Noah's Ark and the flood? Because everything else died then. So was Noah a vampire?
Yeah.
So it's really cool that they also thought that through. That they're like, no, they lived.
All right, so then we get to the Camarilla. The Camarilla is the largest vampire sect. It's dedicated to secrecy and order. They enforce the masquerade, ensuring vampires hide from humans, and maintain strict hierarchies with princes, primogens, and justicars. Their goal is stability, keeping vampire society organized, hidden, even if it means by ruthless politics. So if you go to any city, almost any city, you go to New York, you go to Seattle, you go to Chicago, there's a Camarilla in charge. The very first thing I believe you have to do when you enter a new city, if you're a vampire, you have to go meet with the prince. He has to give you allowance, and once you do, you're fine to hang out in the city. But you have to keep the masquerade, of course.
So you have to
So
register in every city you go to.
yes, because if you're a lone vampire wandering through and you haven't told the Camarilla, they'll probably just kill you. They're like, this is not acceptable. We need order. So
Okay.
and then we have the Masquerade. This is organized disinformation campaign, heavily influenced by Kindred Society, mainly the Camarilla. The Camarilla love the Masquerade. It's intended to convince humans that vampires and other supernatural creatures do not exist. The Masquerade is the cornerstone and survival strategy for Cainites. Without it, humanity would rise up and exterminate all of the dead. So the Masquerade is just you are not allowed to break it. You have to be secret. You cannot let humans know that you exist. Most humans don't know that vampires exist. I mean, honestly, if you really wanted to get into it, our world could be Vampire the Masquerade, and we just wouldn't know. That's kind of the whole point and the goal. Um, so in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, they're a little lenient with it. You get 5 strikes in your entire video game, to not break the Masquerade. If you do it anytime, game over. Your character is killed. So, which is really fun because there's a lot of story beats. Oh my gosh. In Bloodlines, there is this moment where you are walking and you don't even expect it, and this girl starts crying and she comes running up to you and she's begging and she's like, it's you, whatever your character's name is, and she's like, I I haven't seen you in years. Where have you been? And it's someone from when you were a human. And they're like they were one of your best friends growing up. And so they come running up to you and they're like begging you. It's such a crazy moment that I didn't think would happen in like a video game because they're like begging you. And it's fun because besides this moment, you don't really have much backstory on your character. You get to pick background, like you could be like a bodyguard or that, but besides that, you don't have like a lore
Okay.
stuff. And so it's really fun, and you get to choose what you do. And if you end up like kind of letting her know and be like, please move on, that's a masquerade violation. So that counts as one of your 5. And so you're supposed to tell her, you're supposed to just lie to her and tell her that you're not her. If you're a Malkavian, who are the crazy ones, you can tell her that you're her pet turtle and that you've gotten escaped, and then she will feel like she's gone crazy and leave. So that's a fun little fact.
Interesting.
Um,
So,
yeah.
so the easiest way to get out of that interaction by not breaking the masquerade is just by being crazy.
No, the easiest way is lying. It's telling her
Huh.
that you're not who that person is, and that
Like you,
you
sorry, I
leave
look
her
like your
forever.
friend, but
You leave her
like,
forever wondering where her best friend went.
Huh.
ah,
Do you maintain your memories when you become embraced?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
The Anarchs, they reject the status quo of Cainite society. Basically, all of California is run by the Anarchs. They aren't super organized, but they do have instead of a prince, they have a baron. So they do have some form of ruling, even though they say they don't. The Anarchs are really fun. I sometimes think they're super hypocritical. All of the sects, all of the clans, everyone in this game that you will ever learn about are hypocritical. That is one of the things. I mean, they're telling you fake lies, fake stories. So that's just a fact. But I sometimes feel like the Anarchs are especially hypocritical because at least the Camarilla tell you what they're doing. You know, they're ruthless and they're evil a lot of the times, but they're maintaining order and they're hypocritical and all that. But the Anarchs are like, yeah, reject rule. But also we have a baron and we have all of these rules and all of this stuff, and I'm like, well, that's not really anarchy now, is it? So
we,
that's my
it's like we reject the status quo, but we're also enforcing the masquerade in our own way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the
Yeah,
Anarchs.
that I mean, I guess that wouldn't translate super well to like game mechanics, but that would be interesting if they were the rebel vampires who like absolutely hated the masquerade and fought against it, and were trying to like expose themselves to humanity.
I do feel like they'd get wiped out by the Camarilla pretty quick if they were like doing a big like
I
push to
mean,
try to.
yes, and it would be interesting if like instead of a masquerade towards humanity, they had rules to keep themselves hidden from the Camarilla and the other clans to keep
Mm.
themselves safe in that way.
I do believe the
Um,
Anarchs do uphold the Masquerade because
yeah,
even besides the being like wanting to reject it, they need to just because that's what you do.
right.
But
If
they
if
reject a lot of the other stuff, like the you know we are
absolutely
not going to talk to
from
the prince and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, from a
Uh,
gameplay point of view, if the game is about upholding the masquerade and becoming a vampire, you can't really just have an option to like ignore all of that. Um, but it would be interesting if maybe in a future game or project we got to see some vampires who didn't like that they had to maintain the masquerade.
that would be interesting, wouldn't it? And so we have the Sabbat. These are a loose organization of Cainites who reject the traditions and the rule of the Camarilla fully. These guys are the evil ones. These are big bads. Um, they are vampire supremacists who see themselves above mortals and do not care for them. They see that they are the sword of Caine and they think that they're going to bring Caine back. This is why I got confused on whether Caine is dead because they keep doing rituals to bring Caine back to end the end of the world. But I just think that the real truth is supposedly that Caine doesn't care. And so they're
Caine.
like,
So
I can
so
just keep
so
imagining these guys pulling out these crazy rituals. They're like, why didn't it work? And Kane's just like somewhere in the Himalayas, just like reading a book, and he's like, he gets like a phone call or something. It's
yeah.
like, do you want to be summoned to this location? It's like, no.
Hmm.
decline the call. In Bloodlines, can you play as a Sabbat and like have a conversation with Cain and have
No, you cannot. These
okay,
guys are the bad guys. These guys are breaking the masquerade. They're trying to
yeah.
kill all of the
Oh,
Calmarilla.
oh, so
They're
these are the ones who hate the masquerade.
yes, they hate
Interesting.
everything. They hate mortals. They
So
think that they're way above them.
so basically, them and the Camarilla are like at war essentially. Like the Camarilla to constantly kill these guys because they keep trying to break the masquerade.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's how that's how the first game starts. And I think they're the big bad of the second game as well. So um they're bad. All right, so now we get into the strengths and weaknesses of all vampires. All vampires in this world fear light, fear fire, and sunlight. They receive serious damage from both. Sunlight is absolutely lethal after short exposure. Driving a stake through a vampire's heart will not kill them, but it will paralyze them. In the very beginning of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, you get embraced, and the masquerade, the Camarilla burst in, and they throw a stake through your heart because they paralyze you, and so they can paralyze you, and then they take you to go to your trial at the Camarilla.
Interesting.
So stakes do not kill, but paralyze in the heart. The World of Darkness vampires are not affected by garlic or silver or any of that. That is not a thing. Um, and they are not vulnerable to crosses per se, but they are vulnerable to what is called true faith. This is super, super rare, but it's someone who is like super faithful in whatever they believe. And so that doesn't just mean religion. That can mean like if you're a crazy capitalist. Like there are, I read a thing where a vampire in the world in one of the stories is withheld by a crazy capitalist who holds up his credit card to them, because he has true faith.
Crazy.
But this is very rare and very not. I mean, not repelled, but like it kind of weakens
Yeah. The
them.
power of Amex compels you.
Yeah, basically. Um,
So if they're not affected by garlic, silver, and stakes to the heart only paralyze them, can they just die to a gun then? Or do you have to like paralyze them and then watch them until the sun rises? Like how do you defeat a
no,
vampire?
you can kill them from a gun. They have basically like I would say Wolverine, not quite Wolverine levels of healing, but almost. Like if you shoot them with the shotgun in the head a couple of times, they will probably die. So
So and flamethrowers, I guess, are also effective.
yeah, fire and
Especially
sunlight. Hmm. They are immune to most diseases, drugs, poisons, but they can be affected if it wasn't present in the blood of their victims. And so, if like you're on cocaine and a vampire drinks your blood, they are now on cocaine. The vampires. So that's funny. As long as they have blood, they can heal rapidly from most wounds. So yeah, so that blood is kind of stems where all of their powers come from. That's where all of your healing,
Okay.
all of your powers, everything comes from. So if you are out of blood, yes, they're going to be pretty easy to kill. If so yeah. Which is
is there?
why fighting ghosts in the games are very hard because you can't drink their blood. Um, so
Mm, sorry, going back to the first strength and weakness. Would vampires be affected by like bloodborne pathogens? Like can a vampire get an STD just by drinking someone's blood?
let me look that up. Reddit seems to be on the side of it's possible, but as far as we're aware, they're immune to any ailments humans can get, flus, diseases, etc.
Okay.
All vampires have incredible strength, very fast, they're very agile, they're immortal, and they get stronger over time, which makes elder vampires crazy dangerous because if you've been alive for 1,000 years, you're like, well, you're pretty freaking tough.
So like
Um,
the Antediluvians are basically gods.
exactly that. Some people say that it's a lot of those things where, like in the tabletop, I believe like people are like, "Oh, I want the antediluvian to be my villain." It's like they can't. They're they're
Because it
too
would just be a
strong. They're too
TPK, yeah.
strong. Yeah. So
It's like you could try throwing a stake at them, but they can move faster than you can even like think or see, and so the second you grab a stake, you're dead.
yeah. Hmm. Or whatever other horror they have in place, depending on their clan, because they have crazy powers.
Yeah.
A ghoul. I mentioned this earlier. We get into it more later. This is a minion created when a vampire gives a little bit of vampiric vitae to a mortal without draining him of his or her blood first, which would instead result in an embrace. A ghoul's aging stops. They may even get some weak powers and healing, but this goes away if they ever stop receiving blood from their vampire. The blood is crazy addictive. So basically, what this is say a human drinks just a little bit of a vampire's blood, they become a ghoul. They get what I said there, and they are usually obsessed with this vampire because of how addictive it is. And they're kind of like the ghouls are kind of like, hey, can you go pick up my groceries? Hey, can you go do this stuff? Hey, can you, they're kind of like their little puppets, and stuff.
Okay.
In the first video game in Bloodlines, you do not have to do this, which is also one of the fun parts about Bloodlines because there's so many little side things and things you can miss. If you go into the hospital in the back, there's a girl dying. She's gored and she's bleeding and she's asking for help. You can, if you want, just ignore her and move on, or you can go try and ask the doctor to help. The doctor would be like, I'm doing a surgery, I can't help her, we're too busy. So you can go back to her and you can give her just a little bit of your blood if you want, which ends up healing her and she becomes your ghoul. And she'll hang out in your apartment and have little side quests and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's kind of fun.
And then in Bloodlines, is there ever a way to like cut off her supply of blood, and then would that make her go crazy?
yes, there is
Or
actually there is. No, it does not make her go crazy. She just goes back to being a human. But it's like getting off of a probably like a heroin addiction, right? She
yeah,
would have to go through the
serious
withdrawals.
withdrawals and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly, but then she would be a human.
Mm,
This is actually very important. I don't know if you guys are ever going to play Bloodlines, but you kind of you have multiple options because she has a big dreams of being like I believe going to college and being like an artist. I can't quite remember. And you have
mm,
multiple chances of letting her free, letting her go, and just going back to college. But she doesn't want to because as a ghoul, she wants to serve you.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and so
like
she'll
the
like
ghoul.
she'll drop out of college for you and all that kind of stuff if you choose, if you so choose. But you can choose to set her free and let her go on.
So basically, here's my question. As a ghoul, she's addicted to your blood, and so doesn't think clearly, right? Like she wants to serve you because she has a horrible addiction.
Yeah,
Does setting her free break the masquerade?
that's a good
She knows
question.
because vampires are real now. Like, is setting ghouls
Yeah,
free something that
Well, I
breaks the
mean,
I would
masquerade?
assume
Because they
yes, but if you don't tell them, they're not gonna know. I would assume.
yeah.
like, I guess you
And
can
you
hide
just
that
be
you're a
like,
vampire.
hey,
And just be like,
don't tell anybody, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah. It just feels like the masquerade's so important. It's like anyone who knows and you let them go, and they're not like
Well, I mean,
serving you is kind of like
I think it depends more so on how aware the ghoul is of what's happening, because like in this scenario, from her perspective, it was essentially just like a blood transfusion that she got, and then suddenly she's way better, but is obsessed with the person that gave her blood.
that's actually
Unless
true.
you're like,
You don't have to tell her you're a vampire.
yeah,
She can just be obsessed with you for a while. And you can tell her she's a vampire. not sure if that's a masquerade violation. I don't remember. I played the game a couple years ago. The games. But you do not have to tell her. I remember that for sure. So before we get into the clans, I want you guys to do a quick test. I will send you the link.
Okay.
The act of transforming a mortal into a vampire they embrace requires a vampire to drain their victim and then replace the victim's blood with a little bit of their own.
Oh,
All right.
I got the same one
Would-
as you, Chad.
All right.
I'm a
I kind of
Bruja.
thought we might, Eric. I am a Bruja. Eric and I are Brujas. You want to read it?
Yeah, the Bruja are a clan of radicals and troublemakers, embracing those willing to put someone in their place if the situation calls for it. Most see themselves as warriors with the cause, and these rebels are guided by their passions, strength, and dedication to their ideals, whatever those may be.
Bruja, baby. They're actually
Mhm.
not one of my favorites, but I do think they're cool. So,
I am not a Bruja.
what are you?
Banu Hakim.
Heck yeah. Read them.
Ooh.
The judges of the Banu Hakim are torn between their hereditary thirst for blood and their passion for justice. Stern adjudicators, they are fiercely devoted to upholding a moral code and embrace mortals capable of assessing and handling threats, enforcing laws and traditions, and punishing transgressors.
That's
Nice.
cool. I think that
Yeah,
fits you
they're
very,
cool.
very well.
I agree. I actually think
So,
these all fit us pretty well. The first time I talked this, I actually was a salubri, so we'll get into that soon. I'll tell you more what they
oh,
are.
interesting.
That were our clans, apparently, according to the test. The first time I took it, I was a salubri. That was about a year or two ago. Now I'm a bruja. It's kind of interesting. I must have gotten more radical with the way the world is right now, I guess. So that's pretty funny. So to keep this video from being hours long, we're going to do a short overview of each clan. Each clan could literally be its own hour-long video with how much lore and information there is. I originally had 4 slides per clan that I have now cut down to 2. So let's get into it.
All right.
The Banu Hakim. Nate, this is you apparently. Judges of
Sweet.
transgression, intellectuals, lawyers, assassins, blood sorcerers, once known as the Assamites, the children of Hakim have recently joined the ranks of the Camarilla. So they are kind of new to the Camarilla. They were not in the first game, and they are now in the second game, and you can actually play as a Banu Hakim.
So, wait, sorry. I just wanted to read that little thing at the top. The clan of the Hunt, assassins, children of Hakim, sorcerers, mediators, lawmen.
Saracens.
Saracens. Okay, so are they like from like the actual like assassins from history?
Pretty much,
Kinda,
yes. They're exactly
I
that.
was gonna say, this is giving the kind of Assassin's Creed vibe.
Yeah.
I'm totally okay with that. That's sick.
The Banu Hakim, they are torn between their hereditary thirst for vampiric blood and their passion for justice. So they actually have an addiction for other vampires' blood. Which, if we get in this bottom right here, blood addiction, when one of the judges tastes the blood of another Cainite, they find it very hard to stop. They have to make extra checks in the game to not diabolarize vampires. If you diabolarize another vampire, you get stronger, like I said before, but this is very frowned upon, and the Masquerade Camarilla will likely kill you. So this is This is hard because they have this strict moral code where they hunt and they kill people that are evil, and unfortunately, most vampires are evil. And so, in the hunt for killing other evil vampires, they also have the struggle of not diabolarizing them. So yeah, they
But if you're
embrace more.
hunting other vampires, is it so wrong to get stronger by killing an evil vampire?
Yes, it is. You are not allowed to diabolarize.
Aw,
You can kill
sad.
them, but you cannot diabolarize
So,
them.
even if it's someone like a Sabat?
I believe so. Yeah, you're not supposed to diabolarize. It is considered very evil.
Alright, so it's like the big taboo. Don't
Yeah.
don't diabolarize other vampires.
And you can
Diabolarize,
drink them. You can drink their blood or kill them. Just don't diabolarize them.
Okay. You drink
Embracing
their blood,
mortals.
not their spirit.
Yeah. They embrace mortals capable of assessing, handling threats, enforcing laws and traditions, and punishing transgressors. And we get into the Bruja. This is what Eric and I were now. Fighters against the system, rebels against injustice, petty criminals, raging rabble, activists, agents of chaos, warrior philosophers, fallen from grace. The reason it says that is because they used to be like a little bit more of poets, and they used to be like philosophers and stuff. But in more recent times, they're kind of like the anarchs and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
They used to be known as the Learned Clan, but now they're like the Rabble Punks, Hipsters, Prometheans, Rebels, Philosopher Kings, and all that.
That's really cool.
The Bruja. The Bruja are a clan of radicals and troublemakers. They're guided by passion, strengths, and dedication to their ideals. They are embraced others who question the status quo, welcome countercultures, and from spirit fighters to critical thinkers. Quite a few Bruja choose to mingle with mortals and mortal societies, attempting to guide humans through activist political movements, anti-political movements, and the like. Um, so whatever it is, they like to go against it. That is their compulsion. They have to go against the status quo. Now, you think that means, oh, so they're always the good guys. Unfortunately, no, because that can mean they're like neo Nazis because they could be against the status quo. Um,
Oh,
so,
not
so they're not always good guys, and they're not always against the good status quo. But sometimes they are, the anarchs or that kind of stuff. So.
That's very interesting that they can be, like actual punks and be really cool and nice and want to better society, or they can kind of use that for their own gain. That's interesting that there's that duality.
Yeah, it's
and
kind of one of those things where I talked about everyone is a hypocrite in Vampire the
Yeah.
Masquerade. Anyone can be good, anyone can kind of be evil. So,
yeah. And so, also, just do these different clans have different powers? Are we going to get into that at all?
gosh, that was originally one of my slides. I'll just tell you because I know most of them. I deleted that slide because it was just going to take too much time. The
Yeah.
Banu Hakim have a lot of like invisibility, stealth, that stuff, but then they also are the only other clan that have blood magic. They have a little bit of blood magic,
Oh,
and that kind of stuff.
that's cool.
The Bruja have super speed, fighting, and toughness. So they're just like the over the top. They go fast. They can be the Flash. They can rip people's heads off. They can throw cars. They can um,
Okay.
be Superman kind of things. Take bullets and that kind of stuff. Gangrel. The clan closest to their inner beast, from feral soldiers to folkloric travelers and free spirits, from inhabitants of the urban jungle to boardroom sharks. So these are the clan of beast, animal, feral, barbarians, outcasts, wolves, strays. They're
You
kind
could
of
you could say these are the alphas.
they are the alphas and the
Uh,
furries.
Oh
Um,
hell yeah! Oh hell yeah!
yeah,
I got two wolves inside of me, and they're both fucking.
yeah. They can shapeshift, so they can turn into like beast-like creatures. I believe one of their banes, if they don't follow it, they can get like animal features, so they could have like a wolf nose for like a couple of days until it goes back to normal, which would be a break of the masquerade. So they have to maybe be careful for those couple of days. They're
Mm.
often closer to beasts than other vampires. They have issues with their beast that I mentioned earlier of taking control, and when they do, they might turn into an animal and kill people. They think
Mm.
themselves of apex predators. They embrace those who are outsiders, independent hunters, and anyone with wanderlust. They are usually outcasts, living in undesirable areas and yet thriving without bending the knee to a prince or a baron. So they're usually like in the woods or different kinds of things like that. They are used by the Camarilla sometimes. I think one of the gangrels you meet in the first game, you can play as a gangrel as well. So yeah.
Nice.
And they shapeshift and they can live in the ocean. That's sick.
And
Oh,
sorry,
I forgot to
that's
mention
that
that.
power shape.
I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Nate, for bringing that up. Some gangrel have the ability to not. Oh no, sorry. All vampires don't need to breathe, but some gangrel have the ability to also shapeshift into more fish-like creatures or have gills or things. And so a lot, not a lot, but some gangrel live in the ocean because why not? So
Not only are they furries, but they're also scalies.
yeah, yeah. So
And
they
I mean,
have
at
the
the bottom of the
ability.
ocean, you never have to worry about the sun.
Eh?
Mm-hmm. Gangrel have the ability to shapeshift, talk to animals, use animals for their own gain, and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So they probably can't drink the blood of animals, or can they?
I believe they can. Yeah, I believe they probably most likely most of the time do. They like animals, of course, but um, they got to drink somehow. So
Yeah.
Hekata. These ones, there are a couple of clans that I personally don't know a lot about because they're not in any of the video games. Hekata is one of them. They are necromancers. Actually, they are, but I think they were combined. It's
Mm.
confusing. The Hekata are as much of a family as they are a clan. The only true independence in these knights, the separate. There's a bunch of different like clans that came together to form the Hekata, the Giovanni, and that kind of stuff. For
Okay.
them, family is everything. If you are not one of them, you will never know how deep the blood runs. So Clan of Death, they're obsessed with death. They love death. One of their compulsions, I believe, is that they literally have to investigate anything that involves death. Um, they have necromantic powers. They're obsessed with death. One thing is that their bite is exceptionally deadly. Um, and so if they just draw on a drink a human, they end up killing them, or that human will scream, so they can't really do it stealthily either. And so they have learned to drink from blood bags or corpses, or extracting blood from their victims without the use of blood, their fangs, like just taking it out and drinking it. Um, and the clan tends to embrace mortals either from their own mortal family because they're obsessed with their family. So La Sombra, winners at life, religious figures, manipulative shadow masters, social climbers, ruthless fighters. The La Sombra just recently joined the Camarilla. They have always been part of the Sabbat, but more recently are part of the Camarilla, have kind of turned to being like good guys with quotation marks. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, the summer vampires are expected to triumph at any cost. They're kind of like super edgy, super. We're gonna get it done. Most do not seek attention. They prefer to be puppeteers with powers behind the throne. So they like to be in control. They like to be the ones in charge, but they don't want to be the king. They want to be the guy, the hand of the king. You know, the guy
They're
in charge.
the Grima worm tongue.
I don't know what that
Just
is.
uh Lord of the Rings. Do you remember
Yeah.
in the Two Towers, Theoden's like all withered and old, but he's still in charge. There's the
Oh,
creepy dude
sure.
whispering in his ear. That's
Mm-hmm.
Grima worm tongue.
The pale, greasy guy.
Mm-hmm. The Lasombra rarely have time for the weak. The perspective is to you have to survive to excel. They embrace those that breed the odds, dangerous situations, all of that. They don't have reflections is one of their random things. So they have a lot of ghouls, so that the ghoul can tell them how they look, and
Oh,
like give them guidance and stuff like
and
that.
probably go to anywhere that would require a mirror, so they don't have to worry about
Yeah.
being caught.
Most vampires do have reflections, unless they're La Sombra, which is important to know. This
Huh.
is another vampire trait. La Sombra you can play as in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, but you cannot in the first one because they are part of the Sabbat. In 2, by then they have joined the Camarilla. So,
And what are their special powers? Just like I guess like charming
shadows.
and like mind control and
Shadows.
shadows.
Yeah, they
Oh,
have a lot of
shadows.
shadow powers. So they can, in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, they can like teleport into your shadow.
Oh,
It's one of my favorite abilities in the game because you can just be bouncing around the entire map by just being like teleport behind someone, rip their head off or bite them, teleport behind someone, just keep going into someone's shadow. And they have a lot of shadow magic, so they can do things like that. They can teleport you to the shadow realm, Jimbo. And so, like in the game, you can be like you and me. If you're surrounded by enemies, you can just take one guy to the shadow realm with you. Or if you're surrounded by civilians, you could like point at one of them and just take them to the shadow realm. Um, and
Interesting. So it's probably
you
really
can use
easy
them.
for them to like, avoid um breaking the masquerade or going to doing like adverse actions while in a frenzy if they can
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
link themselves and someone else into a safe place.
Very much so, yeah. And that was actually what I played as a Lasombra my first playthrough. I really liked them. They were pretty fun because of the whole ruthlessness, but now they're good. And so I really played my character as like this ruthless person who was ruthless originally, but now she's like, trying to do the right things, but still
That's
pretty
cool.
ruthless. Um, and it was fun. The Malkavians, these are my favorite clan. I love the Malkavians. Seers, jesters, affected by supernatural madness, psychological masters, oracles, conceding them, revealing truths and themselves. The Malkavians are lunatics. Sorry, they are perceived as lunatics by other vampires. The blood of a Malkavian lets them perceive and foretell truths hidden from others. The Malkavians are cursed, and their minds are burdened with seeing too many truths, feeling emotions to such a strong degree. They are all connected to one another in this cobweb or this madness network. So all Malkavians are not quite a hive mind because they do have their own thoughts, but they are all connected and can hear each other's thoughts, and that can get very overwhelming. And a lot of people think
oh,
that they're all connected to Malkav, who is the antediluvian Malkavian, and he's still alive and is talking to them all and giving them truths and wisdom and knowledge. Um, they embrace childers who want insight, who ask deep questions, who have high empathy, emotional intelligence, and intense understanding to know the truth. So
All right.
I love the Malkavians. They're one of my favorites. Camarilla have a love hate relationship with them because they're part of the Camarilla. They're good.
Mhm.
Not when I say good, it's um you
Th-
know arbitrary. It's
They're
like whatever you know. But
it's good as in they're not trying to massacre all of humanity.
yeah. Um because the Camarilla is all like these guys are just crazy. They're insane, but also they can see the future, and that is helpful to us. Um, so that's necessary sometimes. If you play as a Malkavian, if you play through Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, you can play through it the first game, whatever. If you play through it as a Malkavian, the entire game is different. Every single line of dialogue is different. You are insane. People are confused. This is where you can tell that girl that you were originally her turtle, her pet
Yeah.
turtle. There is an entire scene where if you walk past a stop sign, you can have an argument with the stop sign because the stop sign keeps telling you to stop, and you're like, I don't want to stop. Stop talking to me. And so, and it plays on for you and the stop sign fighting for like I don't know 6 text chats. So it's pretty funny.
That's very funny.
What?
Yeah, I love
That's
the
really cool that
Malkavians.
yeah, they had that or I thought to have that detail in the game of you see everything completely differently and think completely differently. So this story is completely differently or goes completely differently for you. It's very
Completely
interesting.
different. There is also an ending that is only for Malkavians, and you can also there's this thing. There's this coffin that you're trying to decipher what it is throughout the entire game. If you're trying to decipher if you should open it or if opening it will end the world, um, and if you're Malkavian, you know what it does, and so you just like don't open it, and so it's kind of funny. Um,
Uh, what are the Malkavians' special powers besides seeing the future?
Yeah, so they can see the future. They have ability to control people's minds and I believe invisibility. Um, and then this got removed, which makes me so sad because in the original Bloodlines game and in the original tabletop game, Malkavians have the power of dementation, which means they can make other people go crazy. Part of that was so fun because you can just become a god in the original Bloodlines game as Malkavian because you can walk into a room and everyone has a heart attack. All of the people you want to fight, and they just die. That's it. Game over for them. They're like you don't have to fight them. Um, and that
That's
has been
crazy.
removed. They now have dominate, which is boring, but yeah, I guess it's fine. So they used to have fun insanity powers.
Okay, they sound like fun.
The Ministry. This is also one that I don't actually know that much about because they're. I don't think they're in the games that much. They're liars, liberators, seekers of freedom from chain, pain, pleasure, other means, cultists, preachers. The special thing about the Ministry, they used to be called Setites or the followers of Set. They believed that the first god was not Cain, but it was the Egyptian god Set. Um, so they're usually pretty evil. These guys are tricksters, tempters. They're obsessed with sinning. So like pornography would be from the ministry and Setite because they think that they have to sin to please Set. Many of the clan they have libraries and different kinds of things like that. Nosferatu. These are probably my third favorite, second or third favorite. I love the Nosferatu. Permanently affected by supernatural hideousness. They hide in the dark, gatherers of secrets, information procurers, hackers, elusive enforcers, often with connections to rats and outcasts. So as you can see there, that on the right, that's a Nosferatu. On the left, that's the movie Nosferatu, but also what they look like. Um, so when they are embraced, they go through this horrible thing where their body shapeshifts and they look gross. They wear this curse on their bodies. And so this means being seen by a mortal is a break of the masquerade. Um, they live in the sewers. They have a massive sewer system. They cannot be seen by a human. If you play as them in Bloodlines, you can get through the entire game by going through the sewers. It's all laid out for you. So that's really fun. It's a harder playthrough, but you can get through it. You will have to. They also have a benefit to drinking rats. So you're drinking rats in the sewers in the game. So yeah,
It's very
um,
interesting.
they lurk on the
I
fringes
feel
of
like it would.
cities. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like playing a game as Nosferatu, like all the social encounters. like they just not exist because you're just running through the sewers, or is it all
They
via like
exist
text
because you're
chats?
going. The game is set up in such a way, it's really cool that you can get anywhere you need to through the sewers.
But like, how do you have a social interaction? Like, if you need to talk to someone, do you like call them on a phone, or like how does it
No,
work?
vampires can see you as long as it's not a mortal.
Okay, you just can't interact with any mortal NPCs at
Is
all.
is it
Mm-hmm.
possible for a Nosferatu to like interact with a mortal while hiding their face? Like if they wear a mask or some kind of
Yeah,
like
that'd
face
probably be
wrap or
fine.
something?
I would assume that's fine.
Huh.
They're also masters of stealth, so they're super good at invisibility. So I mean, you could talk to a mortal while invisible. Um,
Hmm.
and actually, obfuscate is what it's called. It's their invisibility power. And the way it works is you don't actually go invisible. You just stop the person's ability to see you.
Huh.
So it's kind of fun flavor.
Huh.
So, but you'd still show up on like cameras
I
and
believe so.
mirrors
Yes,
stuff like
I
that. Huh.
believe so.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
The Nosferatu invades many types of life. In Bloodlines, the first game, there is a girl who was like, I think, a streamer, and she was like super beautiful and stuff, and so obsessed with her beauty that they embraced her just because they wanted her to be like, well, sucks to be you now, ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
But saying
Aw.
Is
that, they are compassionate and kind because of their curse. They are abused and hated by a lot of people, so they're actually usually pretty compassionate and kind. Um, and the Camarilla likes them and use them like crazy because they know everything. They are amazing hackers. They're amazing um, spies and just the best. They're never seen. And so because of this, the Camarilla loves them because they know everything about you, about the Camarilla, about the Sabbat. They'll know it. They
Hmm.
obsess with secrets, I think, is their compulsion. So
That's good, I guess.
Ravnos, a nomadic clan of masters of misdirection. These rogues and illusionists prefer not to bear fangs for something they can obtain with subtler methods. The Ravnos were kind of, when they originally came out, a racist thing on Romani people, but they're not so much anymore. But that's kind of where they kind of came from. Like, they literally can't stay in one place for a long time. If they stay in one place for too long, they will light on fire, and so they have to keep moving. But they have shifted this kind of originalness to more of like they're now daredevils and they can't um, do anything the boring way. And so I literally wrote, when faced with a problem, this is from the game, daredevils must attempt the solution with the most dangerous or daring action. Anything less incurs a 2 dice penalty. So they have to do it the coolest way possible.
I feel like it would kind of suck to be them though, because like you can't actually like lay down any roots anywhere. It's like crap. I've been
yeah.
in this city too long. Got to leave before I die.
Well, but if they're like daredevils, maybe that they enjoy that thrill of like, oh, how long can I get away with staying here before I risk bursting into flames?
Um,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, so they're daredevils. They have animalism, invisibility, and presence. So natural charm. Presence is like their charm and magic and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And talking with animals because they're on the road a lot, so they're talking to animals and that kind of stuff. Salubriate. This was what I got the first time I took the test. They are known for wisdom. The clan barely exists anymore. In fact, I don't even think you can really play as them technically. Their legacy is one of tragedy and a painful lesson of the eternal struggle. Um,
That person has 3 eyes.
Yes, so that's their whole thing. Salubri have a third eye, which is a break of the masquerade, and so you have to hide it, of course. They have very delicious blood. Like, think of their blood as like just like the most tasty cake or sugar ever. And so a lot of vampires want to eat them,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But they're also healers. They're like the nice clan, like they want to heal and fix and do good stuff. The mage Tremere, um the reason they're not around so much anymore, obviously, is their tasty blood, but the mage Tremere diablerized Salute, which is the founder. Um and then Tremere responded with a vicious propaganda campaign against the Salubri, so everyone hated them.
That combined with their delicious blood, does that make them like more susceptible to being diablerized?
Yeah, yeah, it's very hard to stop drinking a Salubri.
So
But
also,
they're
what
also
I'm
good
hearing here,
healers and all that kind of stuff. So the Toreador, seekers of emotion, romance, cruelty, beauty, anything that can be remind them of the lost humanity and sentiment. Artists, divas, social butterflies, appraisers, and lovers of beauty. The Toreador are known for their seductive nature, enthralling demeanor, and an eloquent grace to the point of obsession. They are obsessed. They can really get into something and not be able to turn their obsession away from it. I think is their compulsion. Toreador embrace artists, lovers into their ranks, forever trying to stir their own deadened hearts. They're actors, singers, poets, and more fill in their ranks as long as they are viewed to bring something to the table. Toreadors usually consider themselves the foremost expert on human experience, keeping a hand on the pulse of society. So they're like the movie producers. They're like the art show exhibit, uh, director. They're obsessive
The-
and stuff. So
Interesting.
And if they're around ugly things, they die.
they don't die, no. But they just need the need to be around beautiful things, and it can hurt them to be around horrible ugliness for a long time. So
So they don't like. I imagine they don't get along with the Nosferatu.
yeah, no, they do not get along. I believe if you play as a Toreador in Bloodlines, which I did as my first playthrough, when you meet the Nosferatu Primogen, which is like the leader of that group, he like hates you and he just makes fun of how your face and stuff, even though you're beautiful. So
That's crazy.
I'm just imagining if you're like an ugly person, you just you would get hired as a hunter to hunt Toreadors just because your ugliness would make it easier to fight them.
yeah, maybe it does. I guess that's a good point. Yeah,
I just imagine like in the job descriptions, like we're looking for horribly ugly human beings.
We
yeah.
must be horrendously disfigured for this job.
hmm I mean, honestly, that's probably a good tactic and one that the hunters could take. I think that would be hilarious.
When the hunter
Um,
game comes out, I hope you can customize your character and they have like an ugliness meter, and if you make yourself more ugly, you're better against
Okay.
Toreadors.
You're when you're min maxing, you absolutely crank the ugly slider all the way up.
hmm
No
And then
attractive features whatsoever.
the Toreador have no power over you.
Eh?
But maybe the Nosferatu think you're kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The Tremere. Scholars, counselors of the cult, warlocks, guard their secrets of sorcery, hoarding, and searching for knowledge. These guys are the blood mages. I mentioned this before, that there was only two, I think, blood mages, which was the Banu Hakim and the Tremere. The Tremere are significantly better blood mages. The Banu Hakim just kind of have the power, a little bit of it. So the Tremere are the worst. No, they're not. They're pretty fun. The arcane clan of the Tremere were once a house of mortal mages. So if you played Mortal the Ascension, which is that other tabletop game, they were
Yeah.
the leader was Tremere. They sought immortality, but instead became vampires in their magic. So they're not. So a lot of people don't like Tremere because they're not like part of the bloodline. They just became vampires through magical means instead. Um, and
So they
their
don't have
blood.
any.
Go ahead.
Sorry, they don't have any Antediluvians or anything like that.
No,
They're
no. They came from the mage Tremere,
Who killed the
who
Salubri
correct,
leader?
who killed the Salubri leader, um, and kind of
interesting.
so that they would have a good spot in the Camarilla. Um, they're very good at bending blood. They're amazing blood mages. In the game, you can just walk into places and make people explode. You can make people's blood boil, so they start screaming, and it'll draw people to them. You can do different kinds of things like shooting blood daggers, all of that kind of stuff, blood magic, and all that kind of stuff. Um, they're very scheming, but they're very smart. So they're part of the Camarilla, but some people don't trust them because they're schemers and because they're not true vampires to them. So but after a long time, they've been more accepted. They're part of the Camarilla, but they're also like still like the kind of like you're not really a vampire to me, but you are. You are a vampire, but you're not to
You're,
me. so
you're not. It's like the Blade
And a
thing where it's
real
like we're
vampire.
true vampires and you're like a half blood kind of
yeah,
guy.
they're
You're like,
full blooded vampires, but they're
oh,
just in the hearts of the vampires, not real vampires.
Yeah,
because you don't descend
they're
from
not
Caine.
true kindred, true Cainites.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, and it's saying here they can't create blood bonds with other kindred.
Yeah, so that happened. This is a long story that we're not going to get into. The Tremere had this thing called the pyramid, which is basically like a big pyramid scheme of how their rankings went. And once that broke, it kind of fell apart. They were no longer able to create blood bonds with kindred, specifically also because they're not like canine vampires. Um, and so they can't have that like mental bond that you have with drinking other like letting another vampire drink your blood. So
Okay.
the Zeminski, I think. Oh my gosh, I'm not sure how you pronounce them. I think that's how you say it. If someone were to call them inhuman, sadistic, would probably condemn them for their knowledge and then demonstrate that their mortal definition of sadism was laughably inadequate. These guys are messed up. These guys are like they can change their bodies so they can look like horrible things like that. Funny enough,
Yeah.
Dracula in the world is a Zeminski.
Huh.
They come off as very pleasant, polite, intelligent, and then you'll like they'll be like, "Yeah, no, you're totally fine. I love you. We're great friends." And then you go in their house and they have couches made of human skin. Um, and so they love turning people and mortals into furniture and the like. Um, and so they're very monstrous and horrible and evil, and they view ownership over all. They aim to conquer and rule the subjects. They have the discipline and power of vivistude, which allows them to reshape and flesh bones. So that's why they kind of look like that. And they can create horrifying war forms, sculpt servants, or turn victims into grotesque art.
These
That's
people seem horrifying.
yeah.
Yeah. You do not want to come across one of these guys. That would be because they come across as the nicest, most polite, most wonderful ones, and then you blink and you're a couch.
You're just
Scary.
like you're a lamp now, and it's like I have no mouth, but I must scream.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, these guys are Sabbat. And I think they're actually one of the founding members of the Sabbat, along with the Lasombra. But the Lasombra have now joined the Camarilla. But some of the Zeminski are also anarchs, but I do not think any of them are Camarilla. So
Okay, that makes sense. 'Cause these guys seem like they'd be the evil ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
Ventrue. Go ahead.
okay, so most of the clans are part of the Camarilla.
Yeah, I would say most are. There's the Bruja, which are like anarchs, and then there's probably anarchs from every clan. The Camarilla is most of them, except for the Zeminski. The Ministry are yes, but cannot be, and the Lasombra, which are but didn't used to be.
Okay.
The Ventrue, these guys are the Camarilla. These is the vampire aristocracy, guardians of tradition and a pillar of the Camarilla. Businessmen, politicians, sometimes traditionalists, sometimes true entrepreneurs. So they're the clan of kings, the blue bloods, the tyrants, the warlords, the politicians, and all that. Ventrue see themselves as natural leaders. They often take positions of power in vampire society. Princes, CEOs, politicians. They believe it is their right and duty to rule. Clan Ventrue has long been the leader of the Camarilla. Each Ventrue can only feed on a specific type of human. Only artists, only wealthy, only people with a certain background. They can only eat people that are like higher up, that they believe
Huh.
are willing, not willing, sorry, but are more,
Worthy.
whatever the word, worthy. Yeah, it would be the word to them. Anything else makes them violently ill. So they can't eat a rat or an animal. They can only eat like maybe a CEO or a business person kind of thing. So
Their
Or
their
a
stomachs are a little too
musician.
sensitive for the store bought food. They have to go to the quality 5-star Michelin or chef
yeah, very much
level
so.
restaurant.
Hmm.
So what's their special power?
They are very good. They have like the enhanced durability, but they are very good at dominate. Like the best. Like they can make you do whatever you want, just by dominating your mind and telling you to do it, and you do it. Which is kind of why I was sad that the Malkavians have dominate now, because I was like
Uh,
demonation was so much cooler. Um,
Mhm.
but I
and it's
think
different.
I think domination works better. Supposedly, like it was worded better, and it just was better than the Malkavian one, so that's why they did it. But I liked the Malkavian one. I thought it was fun. So yeah, and they will only embrace people that they see hold the utmost importance. So you could be like a person that's going up in a business, and say you're gonna become like the assistant to the CEO. Your interview most likely is gonna be with a Ventrue that you don't know, and if they're like,
Oh,
this guy's pretty cool, he's pretty businessman-y, they'll like turn you. So
hmm.
Interesting.
Okay.
that's it. So what clan would you, now that you've heard them all, we took our test, what clan would you most want to be?
Mm. With the exception of potential neo Nazis, I still think the Bruja sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. There's a lot that sound really interesting. The sorry, there's so many that I'm already forgetting the names, but the ones who like hunted wasn't there one that like hunted bad people?
The Banu Hakim.
Yeah. Those ones.
Yeah.
The one that Nate was, yes. Those also sound really cool.
Yeah.
I do like the Banu Hakim, but the one I don't think it might have been Torpeador, but I kind of like
Toreador?
the idea of just being surrounded by like beauty and stuff. Just sounds kind of like it would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
You can't switch your clan once you're in one, right? You're just kind of stuck
No,
with
you
whatever you
cannot.
get.
You are that clan for the rest of your life.
Is
And La Sombra also sounds kind of cool because they also seem like they hunt bad guys now.
yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah, for me, I mean, I like the Malkavians and the Nosferatu, but that would be hell, and
yeah.
I don't think I could actually do that.
Yeah,
And
I was about to
so
say the same thing. They sound super cool, but I don't want to be insane or have to hide in the sewers for the rest of my life.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think the Bruja are really cool, but then when you like actually know them, they're like really hypocritical and just really they're cool, and I like the ideas. I think mine would be the Toreador, just because they're like kind of like almost the most good at pretending to be human. Um, and I believe like most Toreador, like in the video game, every time you get a rank of humanity versus your beast, it's doubled for the Toreador. So they can really just come off as just being a human and stuff. So it makes life a little bit
Yeah.
easier, I think.
Yeah.
That's it. What are your guys' thoughts on Vampire the Masquerade?
It seems really cool. I don't know if I would be able to get into like the video game Bloodlines because I know that you mentioned that there's a lot of like mods that are needed
Just
to
one.
get it to function. Oh, okay. But the TTRPG sounds really interesting. I'm very big on TTRPG, so I'd love to play. I don't know a one shot in that or sometime.
I I actually think the world sounds just fascinating. It seems super fleshed out with a rich history, and I do have this game on my wish list, so I do want to play it soon. I'm just currently playing through Total not Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. Sorry, also playing Total War Warhammer 3 right now, so I'm getting those conflicted.
Too many games to play.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah, this one might have to get bumped up on the list because it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it just like I love how fleshed out each clan is with like this. I like that they've from literally the beginning of creation to now they've like fleshed out the entire history. Each clan has interesting characteristics that allow for such diverse gameplay. And
Yeah.
you're talking about the Alcavians, basically the whole game's different when he plays them, and the whole game's also different when he plays a Nosferatu. It just sounds super well thought out and fun. So I really
Yeah.
want to get into this.
Yeah, and there's different ones for each clan. Like he plays the Tremere. You can meet and get a special house and hang out with the Tremere people. But it's not like crazy different for the other clans. But yeah, the Malkavians and Nosferatu are like totally different games. So it's kind of fun. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you learned a lot. This was pretty much done because we're excited for the Dimension 21. So if you watched this before or after, or you're like, what the heck is this world? Hopefully this helped. This is probably a long video, but there's a lot of information. So I think it's a really fun world and I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very excited to see what Dimension 20 does with the world and the all the different clans.
Yeah.
And tell us your opinions on the games, what your favorite clans are. Tell if you have experience with the TTRPG, let us know. That would just be super cool to learn more about it.
We'll include the link to the quiz that we took earlier in the description, so feel free to take that and let us know what clan you got.
Thank you so much. Make sure to like and subscribe and all that YouTube stuff or whatever, but we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
See ya.